Welcome to Guided Soul Reflections with Sangeeta and Punima. Here, healing meets conversation and awakening becomes part of everyday life. Come as you are and take this journey inwards with us. Hi, Punima. How are you doing?
Hello, Sangeeta. I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. It's a sunny day in London today. Very hot.
Very hot. Yeah, it is hot here as well. But you know what? I'm so excited. This is our very first podcast. And I want our listeners to get to know us, who we are, why we are doing what we are doing. So I want you to start, introduce yourself, tell our listeners who you are, and then we'll talk about this podcast. How did it came about? So yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so who is Pranima? so yeah, okay. So where do I start? So I'll start with 20 years of my. I'm originally from South Africa. I've lived in London for about 20 odd years now. I've lived in New York for a few years, and I my background is marketing, branding, and I've worked for, gosh, some major brands in the last 20 odd years. My corporate world career as such, around branding, launching products, services, and then I moved into digital product management. And while that journey was happening, I didn't realize there's this whole other journey that was happening within me. And gosh, over the years, when you think everything is, working fine, and you interact with human beings and you interact with life, and it's this version of you shows up, and one day something comes knocking, and then you realize, oh, what's this?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with this, and I realized in the last week actually that the first call to really go deep within was in 2012, and I absolutely missed that message completely.
Or
And it
you
wasn't,
didn't? Who knows?
yeah, no, I
Who
didn't.
knows?
I wasn't meant to. Yes, at the time, maybe I wasn't meant to. And through all of this, life took me to a moment in 2020 where obviously the world came to a standstill, and we were all, for the first time, actually sitting still. And through that, I had at that point also been diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis, which went down a path where I literally couldn't do anything, even picking up a kettle, and I couldn't move in bed. And all of a sudden, all these fears come rushing to the top as to, oh my gosh, what is this? Why am I experiencing this now? I even went as far as saying, thank God I don't actually have any kids to take care of, because I can, I only have my own self to take care of as such. And I remember there was one moment where I was sitting on the floor. I was trying to do yoga, and I actually couldn't get off the floor. Literally, I was on my hands and knees trying to get up, but the pain was everywhere. So I couldn't put pressure on any of my joints. And I remember just crying. And I think the words I used was, I surrender. I literally said, God, what am I supposed to learn here? What is my lesson? And I don't know where those words came from, but they came from somewhere. And I think that was the first moment I started receiving messages that I didn't realize I was receiving, and I was guided to Reiki healing, which then obviously surfaced a lot of the childhood trauma, etc. And that was literally the start of it. I think that's where I started. I then did a mentorship with actually both of our mentors, Nimesh Radia, and it's brought me to this beautiful place where I had, literally went in, understood all the masks that I've been putting on for years, and through all of that healing, actually released so much that I'm now, able to channel. I've been channeling poetry. I've been receiving messages. The intuitive, my intuition has become much stronger. I know. I guess I don't know who I am. I'm still on that journey, and that's what's led me to, or leading me. I'm in a transition stage at the moment from corporate to, spiritual mentor healer, and I'm so excited that this is where this path has brought me. So yeah, so that's my journey. Uh, love to, yeah, for you to share your journey of how you got here, and yeah, we'll take it from there. Thanks.
Oh, wow. What a beautiful journey. Hey, I think 2012 was the time when a lot of souls were awakening. That was the time of mass awakening that was
Yes.
happening. So let me introduce myself. My name
Mm-hmm.
is Sangeeta Devan, and I'm a spiritual mentor and a healer and a broadcaster. I wear many hats. I'm a mom of two beautiful, beautiful, or should I say, handsome boys. My spiritual journey started. My childhood was very, very challenging. I had polio when I was 2 years old, so a lot of trauma started to build since I was very, very young. And you grow, you take everything on your chin, and you say, "Okay, this is your life. You get on with it." But then I got married in 2000. Oh, in 1997, and came to the UK. And had my boys 1998 and 2001, and things were going good. Yeah, I people thought I would never get married, I never had kids, and so hey, I'm married, I got kids, I got a lovely husband. But there was something for my childhood was the traumas that was unhealed, that was not even looked at, were coming up really, really badly. And I remember having asthma, which I never had asthma, and things like that. So some energies were brewing up inside me, which we are unaware of it, and we just think, oh well, this is life. You get ill, and that you go and get the medication and all of that. But it took a toll on me in 2009 because I went into depression. It's like when you hit rock bottom, you feel there is nothing else to be in this life. And I was in really, really down situation. And I remember listening to a spiritual teacher, and she was saying, when the challenge come in your life, there's something in you need to shift. It's like the analogy she gave is like if you're driving a car and there's a huge rock suddenly comes in front of you,
Mm.
and you get off from your car and you try to push that rock, and that rock isn't moving anywhere, and then you try to bang your head and you get frustrated and irritated. Why is this challenge in my life? What can I do about it? And she said, what if? And at times we give up because we think, okay, well, I can't move that huge challenge out of my way. So I give up. So what was happening to me at that time? And then she said, how about when a challenge comes in your life, you become like water, you become fluid, you become flexible, because something in you need to change. You need to change form to get through that challenge,
Yeah.
because that challenge is not in your way, that challenge is your way. You have to get through that. And that really, really touched something deep in me. And I was like, okay, yeah, okay, people don't need to change, maybe situations don't need to change, they are what they are, and my past is what my past is. I cannot go back and change or rewrite that. What can I do now? And I remember really feeling frustrated. Say, okay, I know I have to change, but how do I change? What do I do? Because I am the way I am because of what I have observed, what I have known. And so what do I do? And then there's a beautiful thing when a student is ready, the teacher appears. Yeah. So she was the first teacher, and then I remember I'm saying to universe exactly what you did. I said, oh my god, I just cried and I surrendered. I said, you know what, show me a way, because I don't know anything till that date. You know how humans, we are very egoistic. It's like we know it, and I can do this, and I can do this. In that moment of like, I don't know anything, and you surrender, now the doors open. And I remember next 2 3 years of like, I'm switching on the TV, and the right person is talking about the same situation like I am going through it, and what to do. And then every teacher I was listening to was talking about meditation. So then I started to try meditation. My mind was very active. I tried. After 6 months of trying different meditations, suddenly one day I felt something in me slow down. Those negative thought patterns were like, okay, I can see. It's like everything in slow motion. You can see it, and then you can really pinpoint
Mm.
what went wrong, or what needs to change, and all of that. And I was like very excited. It's like, okay, I can do something about it. And then carried on a few years later. So I just took charge of, like, I learned Reiki. I went and followed so many spiritual gurus. I did some Shambhavi Mudra with Sadhguru. I learned from Sidra Jafri. So many teachers came in my life and I learned. And I remember a lot of, the question from people around you who you're living a normal life and they are just living a, logical kind of based life. And then you're following the spiritual path. There's like a question, why are you doing this and what
Mm,
you're going for? And I was asked that by my husband, although he was very, very supportive. And I thought, I don't know, but my soul is calling me
calling
so
me. Mm,
to follow that path.
mm,
And I said to my mom and my husband, it's like, I don't know why I'm doing that, but I know my soul calling is so strong that I know I have to do it. I
mm,
don't know what's the purpose of it. I don't know what's going to happen. But I was doing it for my own healing, understanding myself, who I am. And then 12 years down the line, in 2020, my husband was diagnosed with cancer and he was given less than 6 months to live. And the day he was diagnosed, you know, something in me or everything in me shattered. Everything I knew of life, everything you picture of your future vision and everything. And I just like, I am standing there intact physically, but emotionally, I am like every single piece of me
mm,
is just broken down. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Screamed and cried. And that night, I realized, I said, oh my God, my soul knew that I'm going to hit this
Mm,
huge challenge in my life.
yeah,
And I was prepared for this. My soul was preparing me for me to
yeah.
go through that because it was huge. How do you cope with something
No, you
as huge as that?
no, you don't.
But
Oh,
so I did, I whatever I learned, because suddenly I felt from this woman who is, being supported by her children, her husband, and friends, is like I had to take charge of becoming
becoming
man
all
of
of
the
that.
house.
Mm,
And I had to deal not just with his illness, the uncertainty of it, how long he has with us, my children, how they were going through it, my future. There was nothing that was like, okay, I can pinpoint that,
mm,
okay, this is real. Everything was like, okay, I don't know. And I remember again going through the surrender phase when he was in operation theater. It was 11 hours of operation theater. And I was just walking in my garden, just I didn't want to talk to anybody. And I heard this voice and saying, remember who you are. And I was like, oh God, and I used to listen to these whispers at times. And whenever I listened to it, there was a guidance. But most of the time, our noise is so much that you forget.
you get,
At
yeah,
that point, I had to listen because I was totally quiet. I was like,
yeah.
okay, who am I? And then this noise said, remember everything you learned. And I thought, okay, so what have I learned that I need to do? Because my focus suddenly became outwardly focused, taking care of my husband and taking care of my children and the practicalities of it. And I thought, okay, what can I do? And then the voice was like, take care of you. And I felt this like guilt. It was like, but that's
Mm,
very selfish of me. How
mm,
can I take care of me? I can't even think about me.
yeah.
I said, no, that is the seed. You need to take care of you. And I was like, okay, I was just very baffled, but I thought, okay, yes, I am put in that situation. I have to take care of me. And I remember I created this inner peace program and inner peace meditation for my clients. And I thought, okay, you know what, Sangeeta, my husband had to wake up at 7 o'clock. That was his first time of medication. How about I wake up 6:30 in the morning,
Mm,
have shower, do my meditation, calm my down. And literally my prayer used to be, divine, you have given me this humongous challenge. Yeah. I don't want to even know about the future. I don't want to even ask about it. Please give me 24 hours worth of energy and strength that I can go through it and whatever comes my way.
mm,
Just enough strength and energy to deal with. Yeah.
mm,
Because every day was very, very different.
mm,
Things we didn't know, who was getting anxious. panic attack, anxiety attack. My husband was having seizures. So I was thinking, give me the strength. And that prayer I did every single day. And I kid you not, there was some strength, was every morning I used to have some strength in me and saying, oh, I can get through today. Yeah. And that's where my journey started again. And then we lost him after 14 months. But I learned so much during that phase of how strong I was,
Mm-hmm.
how resourceful I was,
Right,
and
you are.
how to use those tools that I learned very practically. And then, again, then I went into depression after a year of him passing. And then I woke up one day and saying, no, Sangeeta, I promised my husband I will live a good life. So I said, okay, look, you promised. Okay, yes, grieving is part of the journey. I cannot ignore that. There's pain, there's a lot of loss and loneliness. So I said, how can I involve myself in something, in studying something that will enhance my, life coaching and Reiki healing and all of that. So then I became a hypnotherapist. I, got involved with Marissa Peer's world-renowned, hypnotherapist. So I became a hypnotherapist, and then of course I joined Nimesh to learn to read Akashic records, and both of us, I think, were at the same time became a spiritual
Yes.
mentor and healer. And so that's been my journey. I mean, there's a lot of uh, uncertainty, there's a lot of pain, but I think wisdom comes from there, when we go through challenges, when we go through pain. And right now, what I'm doing is I'm focused on guiding people, guiding women who have gone through the similar experience of losing a loved ones, and maybe going through emotional trauma, through heartbreak, losing a relationship or losing themselves. That's a huge grief as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
But nobody talks about that. So
Yeah.
I want to support these women in a way to heal them, to support them on their journey, and maybe do Akashic record reading. So that's where I think I'm called to do that. And Yeah, that's my journey. But tell our listeners about how this podcast then came about.
Yeah. So this podcast, I mean, before we actually talk about the podcast, I just want to take a moment to, you know, just also reflect on what you've shared, right? There's a lot of lived experience, a lot of lived pain, and pain that obviously you can solve, you feel like, obviously, I'm looking at you right now, and, the emotions are there. I can feel it in my heart as you're talking. And this journey isn't about bypassing the pain. The pain is, I think Nimesh used to always say, and it sticks with me like glue, is the pain is inevitable, but the suffering is optional. And a lot of the times we don't realize that we go into this cycle of suffering, and through that, it just, the layers and layers just keep building, right? And the masks, etc., all of it. And if I think about even my journey, and I'd say the first 1 to 24 or 1 to 23, I think, until I moved to the UK, I would say, gosh, it's, I went as far as change my name. In hindsight, I knew I changed it from Panima to Nima. I left South Africa. And at the time, I had all these little reasons. Those reasons were I wanted to travel the world with my sister. And, you create these narratives. But what I didn't even realize at that point, everything was leading me, everything was directing me to this moment. I remember saying to Priyash even years ago, like, I know there's something bigger. I know I have a purpose here that's bigger. And then he was like, and I can't remember the exact way the conversation went, but I wrote a letter to myself and I said, you know what, Prima, or Nima at the time, you don't need a big purpose. Your purpose can be your friends and your family, being grateful, be loving, be kind. You don't need to have something big to show, your I guess your life story. So when this all happened, and all of a sudden, I had my life set out in my head. I was going to go down this road, continue to work in the corporate world, marketing, branding, delivering, that was literally what I saw. And all of a sudden, I have a whole new life. I have something that it all now just fits. I feel like I'm wearing the white dress. That's what I feel for the first time. Like it's solid in my being. There's not any, yes, the fear is still there, and
Yeah.
that will continue, I think. But I know I have to use the tools to bring myself back.
Yeah.
Um, but you know the stuff you talked about, the meditation, you know, that's such a beautiful prayer that you talked about, and we should share that in the notes, because so many people are going through various things, and you know, of all ranges and sizes. And I guess for me, it's just that there is hope. There's absolute hope, and this is a moment in your journey. It doesn't define your entire life. It doesn't define your journey. And you know, we're going to be sharing tips and tools in our journey. These are just little sections. This is an intro. Um, but yeah, we'll, you know, we'll share as we go along. I just want to read one thing before I'll hand back to you about the journey of the podcast, as you always have a little giggle when you talk about it. But this was written in 2012, and I wrote my purpose. This is the first time that I didn't acknowledge at all: to live, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy. Sorry, I'm going to read, so my eye contact's not going to be there. Is to be happy and to make those around me happy, to never stop learning from my partner, my friends, my siblings, work colleagues, intellectually and spiritually. I would like to give back to the community, to the world, to the people around me. And finally, I'll stay true to myself and learn to trust myself and those close around me. And I mean, now when I read it, I'm like, gosh, that's where I'm finally got to. But it took almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So we all on this journey. There's no end, there's no start date, there's no end date, and it's never too late. So
How beautiful is that? And you know what? It's such a great way of coming how this podcast started, because look at your what you have written in 2012
hmm,
and where you are. It's about sharing our love and sharing what we have learned, sharing our journey. And so beautifully, you said that, you know, it doesn't matter where we are, and it doesn't matter where you are. If you're a beautiful listener, you're connecting to us for the first time. It doesn't matter whether you're starting this journey or you've been on that journey for as long as we have been, or even more. It matters, and that we start to understand why are we on this journey. It's important to understand what we can do is what kind of questions can we ask. You know, it's just digging a little deeper. And I think that's why me and Purnima, when we were connecting through Nimesh Radia, becoming a spiritual mentor, both of us, and when first time we met, we were just giggling. You know, we just felt so deeply connected to each other, and it was saying, you know what, we should do something together. It'll be such a good laugh. And then we started, you know, Instagram live, that I just suggested something and you said, yeah, we can do it. And it was just a simple spark, isn't it, when we started to do that. And we started it very next week, I think.
yeah, yeah,
And there was a good flow, and you know, people were starting to connect through us, and we felt really good. And then suddenly the Instagram came and said, okay, you cannot do live, you don't have 1,000 followers or whatever. And in that moment, I think both of us felt a little frustrated and irritated, because we thought, oh my God, we just started, and there was a building of momentum and it felt good. And both of us have the same intention of sharing our journey, sharing those tools, what we learned, because we know we have learned like that from our spiritual mentors or listening to other people's stories and things like that. And basically, it's to create hope. It's just to create hope and saying, hey, we have gone through that and we are still going through it. You know, this journey is not going to end. Hey, maybe we are two steps ahead of you. Maybe we can guide you. Maybe we can just simply share our story, and that might be cathartic to you. Maybe that might feel good for you. So then me and Purnima said, what can we do now? You know, and then I said to her, why don't we start a podcast? Because that'll be a great way of doing it. And then we took a little pause, you know, and I felt that there was a divine pause.
mhm,
And yes, we can sit there and get irritated and frustrated and all of that. And I just took you know, deep breath and say, okay, you know, there's a divine pause, and there's a divine pause for a reason. Maybe we are guided to a better platform or to do something bigger. And No. So then we planned, and then we thought, okay, let's get a name of the podcast and things like that. And here we are, sharing ourselves, very raw, just coming from a place of one soul to another soul, connecting with you from our heart to your heart. And that's the kind of intention we both have, isn't it? And like, if you're guided by Purnima's story or my story, or if you feel you want to connect with us, we'll definitely love that journey as well. But Purnima, the thing you said about your journey and the surrender and what Nimesh said about the pain kind of thing. I remember that phrase was given to me when I was going through with Mahesh is like, Sangeeta, pain is part of life, but suffering is self created. And that was like, oh my God, okay, yes, I am in pain. Yes, I have to go through it. But how can I make sure that I don't suffer what I have gone through it? Yeah. How do I make sure that I grow out of that situation to be a better human being, more kinder, more wiser, more loving? But that one thing that came to me was about, and then we'll talk about it in another episode about how can I love myself? Self love. That took me, that journey of losing my husband took me to a journey of self love.
Wow.
And I think we should talk about that
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
definitely.
Definitely, because that's something I went on that journey that healed me on a very deeper level. So I don't know, do you have anything to say about that? Or
No, I
should we
mean,
share it in another
yeah, I
podcast
think
and,
we'll share it in another podcast. I think you've summarized that really well. I think that's definitely one of the, I think that is our soul's purpose. One of the main things is self love, right? That from self love comes truly everything. So we'll give it the time and the space in a different episode. And yeah, take the opportunity here to thank everyone that is going to be listening in. And yeah, we hope to connect with you in future episodes. And then also, please, yeah, do share topics that you're interested in, and yeah, we'll be in touch. Is there anything before I close off for us, Sankita?
No, that's okay. Yeah, just like you said, this is our first episode, so thank you for listening. Share it with the people who you think can benefit. If somebody has lost, and like Purnima's challenge, if somebody is going through it, whosoever you feel connected to, bring more people out. We would love to have. We are sharing everything with love, and we would love to receive your love as well. That's all I can say. And Purnima, hand it over to you, and. Yeah, whenever we'll come here, we'll share what episode, what topics, and we hope to connect with you very, very soon.
Thank you. Okay, so this has been Guided Soul Reflections with Sangeeta and Purnima. Before you move on with your day, take a deep breath and notice what's one thing that you're going to carry forward from this session or from our time together. Until we meet again, be gentle with yourself. And if you feel called, reach out to us. Details will be shared in the notes. We'd love to walk this journey alongside you. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.